This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And good day to everyone. Hope everyone's had a wonderful time since the last time we were together. We have a really wonderful show for you today. But before we get to that, I just want to say I want to thank the Japanese Gardens of Miami for being a continued support of this particular program, along with the Elks Lodges of South Florida for their continued support along the way with us. Without them, we can't exactly do the show. And my executive producer, Rick Del Vecchio, and my senior executive producer, Tommy Shett, who is also manning all the bells and whistles and making sure that the phone numbers get up and everything else goes up, and that you can find out who's on the program and who isn't. We have got an exciting show for you today. You know, folks, you know my background is in aviation, basically, other than the show business aspect of it. And my dad was a captain. I have uncles who were pilots in the airlines and a couple of cousins. And you know that my love has always been airplanes. And today I have a gentleman on who you have probably seen on the Discovery Channel, Nick Popovich. He is, you know him from doing repos. But that's not all there is to Sage Popovich, which is a great and a dynamic corporation. Let me just tell you a little bit about Nick Popovich, if I possibly can. He is the founder and past president, current chairman of Sage Popovich, Inc. In 2020, he was named and inducted into the Business Industry Hall of Fame. In 2017, he was inducted into the Living Legends Aviation Hall of Fame, which, by the way, has enormous, like Chuck Yeager, people like that are in there. Mr. Popovich and his family have established the Popovich Family Trust, which we will get into. They donated a 737, I believe, to Ivy Institute or Ivy College for work on aircraft and stuff. His family has done so many dynamic things up in Gary, Indiana, which is where they are located. Sage Popovich has been serving the aviation community since 1979. The youngest president in, I guess, aviation history at 29 years old, Petar Todorovic. I knew it. I didn't get it right. Sorry, Petar. He became the president of Sage Popovich at the age of 29 years old. I don't know about you. I was just getting out of the military at the age of 29. He was also named Northwestern Indiana's top 20 under 40, which we will also get to, find out how he got that one. So would you please welcome to the program from Sage Popovich, Petar and Nick. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
I also want to let people know exactly what Sage Popovich is, Nick. So hang on just for another second. You are a global consulting and assist management provider for pre-purchase inspections and appraisal services through repossessions and liquidation of all aircraft types and related inventory since 1979, as I stated. You also offer technical and strategic planning insights to aviation leaders, lenders, attorneys, aircraft manufacturers, airlines, MROs, government entitlees, and individual aircraft owners worldwide, which is saying an awful lot. Nick, how did this all begin for you? In 1979, you were a young man. Aviation is obviously, like for me, part of your blood. How did you decide to begin this corporation? And did you ever imagine it would become what it has become?
No, it was by accident, actually. I left the airlines and started a small airline in the Caribbean. Down on the island of St. Kitts, we had Liberty, and the bank that financed us needed some help. Wanted me to go look at a couple airplanes for me in Sri Lanka. Got out to Sri Lanka and told me airplanes were in bad shape and needed to get them out of there. They asked me if I could get them out for them, and I called some guys I flew with that were also 747 typed and said, "You guys up for an adventure?" And we repoed two 747s and got back to St. Kitts and looked at my two partners and said, "I got a new business. I'm signing the airline over to you." I left and I started this thing, which I thought was going to be a short little gig, just, one or two repos a year and paid my bills. And, my partner sold the airline 4 years later for $44 million in cash. they're sitting on the same island, and I'm working 16 hours a day.
Yeah, well, now, am I wrong? And this is kind of getting off course, but since you said the islands and all, didn't Maureen O'Hara's husband own an airline down there in the islands somewhere as well?
I think he owned an airline in St. Vincent, if I'm not mistaken.
And I think she learned how to fly too. I think she was an accomplished pilot. I believe. I could be completely wrong about that.
That I have no idea. Much before my time.
Oh, yeah, well, there's a lot. What airline were you with, by the way?
Braniff.
Ah,
The original Braniff.
you know, the first time Petar, I'm not going to ignore you for a second. I'm just
No.
The first time I was with my dad at Miami International Airport, and I was picking him up because he was a captain for Eastern. And while I was waiting for him, and back in those days, they didn't have security like they do today. So I'm waiting at the gate where his plane is coming in. And I see this beautiful light blue airplane landing with a white tail and the white wings. And I said to one of the pilots that I knew, "What airline is that?" He said, "Oh, that's Brennan's new color combination. They have a bunch of them with yellow and orange and blue and green." And I said, "Man, that's beautiful." I immediately went over to Orange Blossom Hobby Shop, got a model of a 707, painted it light blue, put the decals on it and everything. I fell in love with that color for that. And I fell in love with the airline in a sense, because I thought, oh, those are great colors, man. That's fantastic. And of course, then later on, Calder came in and did his thing for Braniff Airlines. But that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That really, really is. Petar, how did you get involved with Nick and the company?
By accident, truthfully. No, I went to Purdue University for aviation management. I'm proud to say that now, considering what's going on in the tournament with us going to the Final Four this week.
Oh, please. My team didn't even make it this year. Last year, we were in the Final Four. This year, we didn't even get that far.
It's okay. I felt some heartburn the last few years, so we're due. But yeah, I went to Purdue, originally from Northwest Indiana. My parents immigrated over here from Serbia in the late 90s, so I grew up here in the area. I always knew there was an airplane guy that lived in town. Didn't know it was Nick. Never had a relationship with Nick, and I was looking for a job once I graduated school. And Nick was looking for an intern at the time, and I just happened to put my resume in, and he brought me on board. It was supposed to be a 6-week internship, and It turned out to be going on 11 years now.
And you, would it be safe to say, Nick, that he was the youngest executive at 29 years old in the country in the aviation business?
I would assume one of the youngest, if not the, yes.
Yeah. Did you grow up, Petar, loving aviation?
I'm not a pilot. I've never flown. I would say I was very interested in aviation, more so than had a love for it, and it just became a little niche that I liked.
Yeah.
Solving puzzles, I guess, is a good way to do it. Good way to put it.
Yeah. And of course, now with the aviation industry being what it is, it's not what it was when I grew up, and I'm 71 years old, and Nick, we're not probably that far apart in age. You're maybe a little bit younger than me, but and I remember what my dad said many, many, many years ago. He said it's going to come down to eventually 5 airlines, a couple of commuters, and that's going to be pretty much it. Everybody's buying everybody else out, and the American people, with what is going on now. Most people know you, Nick, and your company from, as I said, the Discovery Channel on repossessions. However, your company is much larger than that. Much larger. I mean, you go in and via the federal government, and you help airlines that are stumbling or fumbling, or corporations, aviation companies, and you go in and try to help them build back up again, or if they are completely dissolving, you also take care of that transition too. Talk about that aspect of your business and how that works.
It's an interesting dynamic. We've gotten pretty well known through our aircraft management and our work with various bankruptcy courts as a turnaround operation as well. And it started many years ago. There was an operator in Pontiac, Michigan, that was in trouble, and I got sent to repo all their aircraft. And after getting there and looking at the operation and understanding the situation, I talked the lender into holding off and doing the right thing and helping them get back on their feet and get them solid enough to where they could sell it and exit with some dignity and some cash.
Yeah.
And since then, we just got called in on difficult situations to try and make things work.
Yeah. There has been, Nick and Petra, since you've been in the business, I'm sure you're aware of it, a lot of degrade in the aviation world and a lot of degrading that goes on in the aviation world. And I remember a friend of my dad's, Nick, he was a captain for Northeast Airlines. You remember the old Yellowbirds?
Yep.
And when Delta bought them out, I don't know why this happens like this. I guess it's sort of like in history of, spoils to the victor. But boy, they treated those pilots and those flight attendants at Delta from Northeast like they were nothing. And his seniority was cut and his benefits were cut. And I hate to see that, in any industry. I don't care if it's the aviation industry or the automotive industry. And even when Eastern folded, which my dad was long retired before that happened, it was a shame what happened there too. And it's sad. It really is sad. And what's going on nowadays with Boeing, one of the top manufacturers in the country. Nick, do you think people are going to start losing faith in Boeing aircraft, or is it United Airlines maintenance? I mean, you must have an insight into this, or Petar, you might have an insight into this as well as to what's going on, or is it just slipshod workmanship?
I think there's a couple of issues there. Back to the airlines and pilots coming in. If it's not a merger, the company that's being acquired really has no standing to get into the seniority list. And as you know, everybody comes up through the ranks by seniority.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different subject. And a lot of the new acquisitions and when people are taking something over, they work that out ahead of time now so that there's more equity to it. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second half of your question.
Well, no, it was about what's going on with Boeing. And, it seems like every week now there's something else that's gone wrong with Boeing. Now, losing a tire on takeoff, that can happen on any given day, anywhere in the world. I mean, I understand that. The fact that maybe an airplane will skid off the end of a runway, that can happen anywhere in the world. Both of you know that, depending upon the climate, the weather, how fast they were coming over the fence before they actually, the main gear touched down. There's a lot of explanation for what's going on. But boy, it doesn't look good for United or for Boeing at the present moment. And the 737-8 is not really. I mean, I was a pilot. I didn't fly like you did, Nick. I didn't fly jets. But, do you think the American people are losing faith in our manufacturers here?
I certainly hope not. I don't think that Boeing experiences any more level of difficulty than Airbus. I would rather, personally, knowing both aircraft, I'd rather ride on a Boeing.
Yeah.
A lot of what we're seeing is maintenance issues. I mean, the panel that came off the United aircraft last week or the week before, that airplane was 29 years old. How do you blame Boeing for something, they built 29 years ago?
Yeah, same with the wheels.
So, I think that in today's environment, all manufacturers are having trouble. A, they're having trouble finding qualified help. B, I think they rely on their people to do their job. And as you know, that on any given day, somebody's going to miss something.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Not an excuse, but it's human error. The two MAX crashes that happened overseas, I think a lot of that was pilot training. I don't think it was the airplane. And your airplane starts the purpose, the first thing you do is kick off the autopilot and fly the airplane. That didn't happen in either one of those crashes,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So I don't know that people are losing faith in Boeing. I think Boeing's a sterling manufacturer. They've been around a long time, delivered a lot of airplanes, and
Yep.
For the amount of hours they fly and the number of people they transport, I think it's still the safest way to travel in the world.
I agree 100%. My whole question though is like, do you really let the manufacturer inspect themselves? I mean, I think that's what kind of where this is all coming from and going to, Nick and Petar. I mean, where they had their own inspectors instead of having FAA inspectors come in and inspect the aircraft. I mean, you can't have self-inspection because something is going to go wrong.
Well, first of all, I don't know if you tried working with the FAA lately, but most of them are still working from home.
Oh God.
I mean, it's tough.
Yeah.
We can call a FSDO in another district, and we're not going to return call for weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Does the government have the manpower to inspect each and every airplane and each aspect of that airplane as it's being built? No. You have to rely on the manufacturer and his manufacturing specs to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Petar, what have you learned so far since you've been in the aviation business about the world of aviation and the people in it?
It's a lot smaller than you think. Most people think aviation, while it's a global field, everybody knows everybody. I would say that's the easiest way to put it. Whether you've got a good reputation or a bad reputation, everyone knows it.
Yeah.
But I love it. I wouldn't change anything. I'm fortunate to be here. I'm fortunate to have a mentor in Nick that I do in this field. With the level of respect and notoriety that he has in the world, it's truly amazing. Dealing with some of the customers and folks that we have. So,
Yeah.
and everything I say about not only Nick but the rest of our staff here.
Well, having Nick where he is, I mean, has got to be so fulfilling in that people come to you first, Nick, before they go anywhere else. Your reputation is spotless. I mean, you're honest, you're straightforward, and that brings me to the next inquiry. You can't be where you are without the people around you that you trust, that they know what they're doing, they're going to do what you want them to do, and you get the right people for the right job that can mix and match and work together, and everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And if you get the right team around you, you can be a success, I think, in just about any industry. Would you agree to that?
I agree. As I tell the people here, integrity is number one.
Yeah.
Operation safety is number one. We're lucky that we have the obstacle of being located in Northwest Indiana, so it's hard to attract established people in the aviation field to come up here and live here. They all think Miami. But as we have learned is if we can find the attitude, we can give them the training in aviation. And so over the years, we've built locally. And I'm happy to say that in the beginning, it was mostly women, single mothers, that turned this company into what it is.
Yeah.
And it's a family atmosphere here. It really is. Everybody looks out for each other. So
I think that's the key. Nick and Petra, to anything is Petar rather. I think that's the key to anything. A family atmosphere. You all get along. Yeah, you have your moments under the sun. You disagree. Families do. I mean, I come from a family of 9 kids and 2 adults, except for my dad, who my mother always referred to as the 10th child. Being a captain in the airlines, he was always either playing golf or flying his L-1011 or his DC-8 or whatever the case may be. But I grew up around it. I loved it. That was going to be my dream. And then my eyes, after I got out of the Air Force, started to go down, and that kind of ended up, and I ended up in this business as an entertainer for all these years. Although, Nick, I got to admit, when I was living in Chicago and I was working for Neil Hartigan in the Attorney General's office, I wish I would have known about you. I would have come knocking on your door in no time at all. No time at all. But back in what? Well, in 1979, you got started. So yeah, you were in business by the time I was living in Chicago, because I was there for the Chicago Bears, the '85 Bears, and afterwards, and I didn't leave there until '91. So I should have come knocking on your door if I'd heard about you. It's too late now, because I'm down here in Florida and I like warm weather.
We know that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're watching Main Street. I'm Gary Allen, your host, along with Nick Popovich and Petar. Petar, please pronounce your last name, please.
Todorovic.
Todorovic. He is the president, one of the youngest presidents in the aviation industry today at Sage Popovich. Who is Sage, by the way? Is that a member of your family?
Sage is one of my ex-wives.
Oh, well, then I say no more. I will say no more, sir. I have one of those too, somewhere out there in the land. Let's talk before we get back into the aviation world completely. Let's talk about your family trust. I mean, that is beyond everything else you've done, and the love that people have for you. And I've only known you a short time, and I like you an awful lot. Let's talk about your family trust and the things that you do for the local colleges up there. Donating a 737, that's not just taking 20 cents out of your pocket and saying, here, have it. Talk about that family trust and why you put it together with your family.
Years ago, we decided that we were so blessed that we needed to give back. So we looked at 4 areas we wanted to concentrate on. One is children with disabilities. So my ex-wife had a nice horse operation. So we opened a program for children with autism. And they came to the barn and rode and started to interact with people. It was amazing to see how the horses would draw them out of their shell.
Yeah.
We expanded that to education. We have some endowments with a couple of universities. And then we, of course, love veterans. We do a lot with Veterans Airlift Command.
Thank you, sir.
And then the final fork on that is first responders. We're very active with local and federal law enforcement and all of the first responders. And so we decided that we were so blessed that we needed to start giving back, and we set up the foundation to do that.
Wow. I mean, by the way, you don't know this unless you caught me on Facebook, but the show that I did 2 weeks ago was on autism, dealing with the University of Miami. And it is amazing the response that I got from people who don't understand it, who don't, even if they know someone with it, they don't completely understand it. So I understand where you're coming from, how the animals and stuff will bring something out of a child who's autistic. And you know, instead of being forgotten, there they are, and your family does something. And on behalf of veterans, I thank you very, very much for what you do for the folks that I served with and around. And first responders are vitally important in every community, no matter where you are. And so that's fantastic. I mean, that's great. But how did you decide to donate a 737? I mean, that's not easy to let go of.
We're involved with a program, which is a public-private cooperation called NISA, Northwest Indiana Information and Security Sharing. And it basically was started by U.S. Attorney in the Northern District of Indiana. And it combines 7 counties up here and all the first responders and all the big businesses, U.S. Steel and BP Amoco. Mm-hmm. And we had an Airbus A320 we repoed in Greece sitting on the ramp. And the local SWAT team asked if they could use it. for training. I cleared it with the owner, and they said, sure. Next thing I know, we had 50 dogs come in here, bomb sniffing dogs and drug sniffing dogs come in, ask if they could use it. So we had an old 737-300 coming back out of U.S. Air, and a GE was the lessor. So I cut a deal with GE that would pull the engines off and would donate the airplane to Ivy Tech and use it as an emergency response trainer. So we had fire departments, ambulance crews, airport personnel, SWAT teams. We've had U.S. Rangers here. The FBI SWAT team was here. So it just worked out well for the airport and for the community at large.
Well, Nick, if I could give you a big hug right now, I would. I got a little tear in my eye for the stuff that you do. And please excuse me for that, but it's not often you find that many people like yourself that are willing to do something. But considering your background and considering who you are and what little I know about you, but what I already do know, I love very much. And I'm so proud to hopefully begin a friendship with you. Now, the living legends of aviation, was that a shock? Or were you, you don't expect something like that.
I have two good friends who you probably have heard of. One was Bob Hoover, the air show pilot, and the other is Sean Tucker. And the two of them nominated me, which was kind of a surprise. I can't imagine why I belong in that group, but
what? With your background?
When you look at that group, it's astronaut. You go down the list, it's Branson and Smith, and you just look at the list and the names that are in there and all they've contributed to aviation.
Yeah.
I was honored to do it. I just, it spoke more to my staff and employees.
Yeah.
Who actually, did all the work to build the business. So.
Yeah. It's I don't know if I mentioned this to you at all, Petar. I don't know if I mentioned this to Nick or not, but I had an older brother who spent 14 years in the NFL, mostly with the Baltimore Colts. And then he's gone. I lost him in 2020 due to COVID and CTE. And he always used to say that any awards that we win, whether we go to the Hall of Fame or whether we win MVP or whether we win linebacker of the week, it's not because of what we did. It's because of everybody else around us. And I think that's, in this case, Nick, I think that's what people are saying. Not only you, but your entire staff of what you do. And this young man here that you brought on board at 29 years old, I think it speaks highly of who you are, what you are. And when I've called the office, the staff has always been extremely nice to me. Extremely nice and professional. And that is so welcomed in this world today where people are snippy and snotty and everything else out there. And I don't think you want that from your people at all. But I want to move on, if I could. We talked about also you have a 75,000 or 100,000 square foot supply parts department on your premises.
We rent those ones at just off the Porter County Airport, ones in LaPorte. They're rented facilities. And Petar has taken over the liquidation arm, so I'll let him tell you about those.
Yeah, it's a combination of inventory that we own ourselves personally and sell, as well as from the consignment inventories and liquidations that we've gotten over the years that we're selling on behalf of other companies or lenders.
Right. Do you go in and you dismantle aircraft, or the parts come to you? How does that work? If somebody calls you up and says, "Look, I've got I'll say an A320, and it's kind of reached its final legs in life, although I don't know why it hasn't been out that long," and we either want to sell it bit by bit, piece by piece, or sell the entire aircraft. You go and you analyze, you take a look at it, and then you decide what you're going to do and not do with it.
Yeah. We'll go out there, we'll take a look at it, we'll give the client an option A, option B, option C, let them see the economics on each option and whether it's sell it as is, whether it's parted out, whether we do the tear down ourselves or another shop manages it. We can handle it from point A to point B for them, all the way from start to finish.
Now, do you have facilities all around the world like this, where if somebody calls you from England or France or India or Pakistan and they need a part for this aircraft or that aircraft, or even for a private aircraft, you know, do you have facilities like that around, connections like that, or facilities or you know, hangars like that are set up already?
We work with several operations and storage facilities. You know, large one in Victorville, California, Marana, Châteauroux, France. So we have longstanding relationships with those that if we need to use their facility, they not only will give us the facility but also the manpower if we require it. Yeah. The vast majority of our parts. Excuse me one second.
Go ahead.
The vast majority of our parts come from companies that have failed, either airlines that have failed or that will go in and pick up their entire inventory and bring them to our warehouse and liquidate them.
Really?
So right now we have 300,000 part numbers and almost 1 million parts in the warehouse.
Now the desert graveyards out and out in New Mexico and Arizona and everything, I've passed by them, and now what happens out there to them? I know sometimes the airlines will send aircraft out there temporarily, not necessarily to be torn apart or whatever, but what happens to them out there if they're out there for too long? Is there a point where they can be out there too long?
There is. You look at the old Goodyear facility where they had a lot of 727s stored. Just one day, the decision was made, we're going to cut them up, and they brought in portable smelters and everything and cut them up, turned them into ingots right there on the property.
And what happens to those pieces?
Well, most of the engines, they'll come off and probably be torn down for parts because they were due heavy inspection, and it doesn't pay to do it. The avionics will be removed, and as long as they're still in use, they'll be on the market for replacement parts.
Yeah. Tommy, do we have that picture of the parts department there? Yeah, there we go. Is that one of your facilities?
I believe it is.
Yeah, I got that from your website, which is sagepopovich.com. And also, if you go there, you have their phone number. You can find out so much information about Nick and his entire staff and everything that goes on. I mean, it's got to be quite an undertaking. That's the phone number you can reach them at too. That's the general phone number. You can inquire about anything, because we're going to get into something that really is fascinating here, the charter business. If somebody calls you up, how far back can you go, Nick and Petar, as far as a part is concerned? I mean, I don't think you're going to go back to the DC-8 or 707 by any stretch.
We do.
You do?
Especially the 707, because a lot of those parts right now we're selling for the KC-135.
Oh, yeah, back to the Air Force.
Yeah.
And
there's still quite a few DC-8s flying.
There are?
Yeah.
Wow, that was my dad's plane, the DC-8, and then he went to the 61, the 63. It was an airplane. I loved it, man. I loved the airflow, how big it was, and the 707 I loved too. And then its brother airplane, the 720, I loved a great deal of when Eastern had those, which was another part of this that I wanted to talk about. You talk about parts and you talk about maintenance and you talk about everything else. And you guys do a lot of maintenance. You bought a company called, I believe, Togs. It was the name. Is that the name of the company?
That's the name of it.
I finally got one right.
Screwed.
What do you mean? You?
No, a young man that was at one of the companies we rescued. When they sold it, he got screwed over. And so I talked him into starting a repair station, and he named it Togs. Tired of getting screwed. And so when he retired, we bought it from him. We kept the name.
Oh, or you could put that on your divorce papers. It doesn't matter either way
Yeah,
you want to
doesn't
go with
matter.
it. They can put it on there too. Um, but yeah, Togs was interesting when I was reading about that. I mean, the things that you can do with that company is just unbelievable. Talk about that, how it came to be when you bought it from this young man who you knew, and where it's going, and how has it helped your company as well.
Actually, this is Petar's deal.
All right, Petar, where are you? Did we lose you?
I think we lost him. Well, so for years we would repo an airplane, and if it needed maintenance, we'd send it to a third-party shop. Petar, once we made him president, said, we're missing the boat here. A, we're missing the revenue, but B, we're doing our client a disservice because now we're shuffling airplanes around and costing them money to move them, and they're not getting any discounts from the shops because they're
Right.
bankers. He said,
Right.
let's just go into the business and do it ourselves. And we were working with Blake at Togs, and Petar decided to make the offer to buy it from him as he was thinking about retiring. And he's turned it into an operation for us, and we're real excited about that growth opportunity.
Yeah, it's amazing here when I was reading about it and the things that you can do. You have an AOG Go team, landing gear overhaul, airworthiness certificates, you name it. You guys can basically do it for, I guess, private aircraft right up to airliners.
Yeah, we go through regional aircraft, regional jets, helicopters, and almost all corporate jets.
Yeah, yeah. What is your favorite part of the business? I mean, I know you're semi-retired now, but still.
I think my favorite part of the business is the workout end. There's nothing worse than going in and closing an airline and putting people out of work.
Yeah.
That's always been a conflict for me. But when we got into helping the turnarounds,
yeah,
and working through to keep the employees working, getting the banks to go along with a plan to revive the operation, I think that's the most rewarding part of the industry.
What do you think attributes failure like that? Bad planning to begin with, just ego takes over. Because, as far as I know, most of the people that are in management of the airlines nowadays, small, medium, large, whatever, they're not the airline people that I grew up around.
No, they're not. The industry's changing. I think on the airline side, I think a lot of the failure comes from expanding too quickly. You saw that happen with Braniff. You saw it happen with Midway. You see it happen time after time. And of course, the other cause of failure is financial.
Yeah.
The airlines run such risk. Fuel. Just look at the cost of fuel, how it varies day to day. And when that's the highest cost for an operator.
Yeah.
And of course now, and not to take anything away from pilots, but man, these new union contracts where one airline promises their pilot they'll always be paid 1% more than any other pilot in the air. How do you continue to do that?
I don't know. I know my dad didn't make any money really as a pilot until he started flying jet airplanes. I mean, on the Connies he did okay, but when he got to the DC-8, that's when he started to really make any kind of money. And of course he retired on a 1011, but it is what it is. But I've always thought, and my dad said this about Eastern: too many different types of airplanes, too many maintenance headaches, too many vice presidents, high labor costs, and back then fuel was cheaper than it is today.
Oh, much, yes.
He said, but there was he said, how many aircraft? He sat down one day and he said, we have 9 different types of airplanes under the Eastern umbrella. Now, granted, many of them are being leased out from somewhere else, but he said, how can you keep maintenance up when you have 9 different types of aircraft going? And I remember him saying, he said, there's a little outfit out in Texas called Southwest. They're flying one type of airplane. And he said, they'll probably do that with all different variants as they come on board. And he said, watch, they're going to grow faster than you can shake a stick at. And they have. Southwest has become I guess, the gold standard for airlines now as to what to do. Because don't they have their own oil? Didn't they buy their own oil futures not long ago?
Yeah, they did. And then Delta bought a refinery.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
But I think you're right. I think Southwest was a unique situation because of their travel. They could reach everywhere they wanted to go in a 737. And now they're starting to go to Hawaii. But in the past, you couldn't go international with one aircraft type. It just didn't make sense.
No.
So, but when an airline has 9 different type aircraft, they're stocking parts for 9 different aircraft. They're training people for 9 different kind of aircraft. They're having tooling for 9 different kind of aircraft. It's way too expensive.
Yeah. And I worked for Eastern while I was in college. I was slinging bags, not a baggage handler, but I was a sky cap out front on the sidewalk. But I know guys that were slinging bags down on the ramp, $25 an hour.
Oh yeah, when minimum wage was what, $3 an hour, $3.25.
Yeah, and of course I left once I got out of the University of Miami, Petar, and you'd be surprised. My uncle got me a job working for Larry King. Now I don't know if you know who that is. Nick knows exactly who that is. That's how I got involved in show business, was working for Larry King and stuff like that. Sorry we lost you for a few minutes, young man. We missed you. But I want to talk about Togs with you.
Still can't hear you.
He can't? Okay, all right. Hopefully he'll catch on.
These young kids are technology challenged.
When you think about flying and the luxury of charter, you guys can charter flights for people. Do you have your own particular aircraft for that, or do you just charter through other people?
We charter through other people. We have 2 corporate aircraft. We fly a Bombardier Challenger and a Beach Hawker 850.
Tommy, is that the picture we have? I believe I have a picture of that. If you click on it, it'll open up. I got a picture off your website, Nick. I don't know if it's a Beach or not. That's it?
The Hawker 850.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Oh, that is such a beautiful airframe. I love the paint job too, my friend.
Yeah.
I mean, that is beautiful. Wow. That is just something else again. Oh, by the way, I love your logo.
Thank you.
I mean, I do. Do you have that on baseball caps and T-shirts or anything?
We do.
Oh, I got to call up and get one.
We'll send you one. Yeah.
I got to have. Huh?
It started out as my ex-wife on a broom. You think I'm kidding, don't you?
No, I didn't take a really great look at it, but now that I know the name and if you could go back and look back at Nick Popovich 30 years ago and give him some advice from where you are now, or young people like Petar in the business, what would it be?
It would be to always deliver more than you promise.
Yeah.
Your integrity in doing more than you promised somebody you would do determines who you are in the industry. You could deliver more than you promised 100 times. You deliver less than you promised once, and you ruined your reputation.
That's true, I think, about so many things, Nick. But I think that falls through the cracks with so many people. Oh, what's the old saying? It's okay for government work. I think that was the old saying. It's not good enough for government work. It's just not. I was taught I would get up at 3:30 in the morning for a 6 o'clock show, be at the radio station, get ready, be prepared, have whatever you need to do. Make sure you're on. And as an actor, make sure you're on your mark. You know your lines. You're there on time or ahead of time. To me, if you're on time, you're late.
Absolutely.
You know, my dad, if he used to do the Mexico run on the DC 863, and he had to be. I think their block to block was 6:30 in the morning when he left. Um, he was there at 5 o'clock, going over everything. But mostly what he was going over was making sure his golf clubs that he brought with him was brought on the airplane.
Absolutely.
So,
that and who your flight attendants are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Would you? Hey, by the way, would you believe Eastern turned me down to be a flight attendant?
Well, back then that wasn't quite the standard.
Well, they were hiring men, but when I was turned down, he went up to 36th Street, the old employment office, which I don't think is there anymore, and he said, "What's going on here?" And he knew the young lady who was interviewing me. He flew with her, and she said, "I'm going to call Beth because I've known Gary since he was a little boy, and I'm going to explain it to Beth why we can't bring Gary on board, and then she'll explain it to you. But your son Gary is a man's man, and that's not what we're looking for at the moment."
Yeah.
So it took him from Miami Airport halfway to Fort Lauderdale, where we lived, before he went, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay." We've got about 15 minutes left in the program, and I promised my producer I'd get him out of here at 5 minutes till. Let's talk about repossessions from beginning to end. You get a phone call, Nick, now I remember the one that I saw, I believe, on the Discovery Channel, where there were two A320s in a foreign country.
Right.
And if I remember from A to B, could you take us through what is not necessarily normal, but average repossession that you have to go through if it's in a foreign land or even just in the United States?
Sure. We'll get the call. We'll research the airplane, try and figure out where it's flying, where it's at. Today with ADSB, that's a lot simpler to do.
Explain to people who don't know what ATSB is, please.
ADSB is a beacon that provides your physical location at all times. It's tracked by satellite worldwide. So you always know where that airplane is as long as you know what their code is. So you have to find the airplane. Once you find the airplane, you have to determine what you're going to need on site. Are you going to need mechanics? Are you going to need a DAR, a designated airworthiness representative, to sign off a ferry permit? Pursuant to the insurance company, what are you going to need for crew? Not only do they have to be type rated and current, but if it's transoceanic, they're going to have some crossings, and insurance company is going to want to know how many crossings they've done. So you assemble your team, and then you pick a time when you're going to do this. Generally, we like to do it at night. We get out on the ramp and don't have much interference. We do primarily what's known as self-help, which means we don't have a court order. So if during the course of repossessing the airplane, the owner comes up and says, "Stop, we have to stop. We can't breach the peace."
Wow.
So, we'll generally take my airplane, taxi up to the other airplane. We immediately stick a notice on the airplane that it's been repossessed. We then speak with the local authorities and get an incident number. We now have control of the airplane. For anyone to try and take that airplane back would be air piracy. At that point, it's the logistics of fuel, flight plan, tech stops if we have to make them on the way back. We can't go nonstop. Customs, customs bonds. Then we put the pilots in them and fly them back.
Yeah. Is it pretty much the same procedure if even if you're in the United States and you get a phone call that there's an airplane down in Fort Worth, Texas, or Lubbock, or out in California somewhere? Pretty much the same procedure, same thing goes on.
It's exactly the same.
Now, I know from watching the show, because I love to watch the show on the Discovery Channel, that not everything goes correct once you get in the air. What may appear to be okay on the ground through visual inspection doesn't necessarily mean that 20 minutes when you get in the air, suddenly a red light goes on. How often does that seem to happen when you've done repossessions, which, by the way, you've done over 2,000 repossessions in your company history?
Yes. I'd say about 5 to 7% of the time. We're pretty careful before we start flying the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
We've got an obligation not only to our crews, but also to the people on the ground to make sure that airplane is safe.
Yeah.
If we have questions, we'll delay the takeoff and troubleshoot it and solve the problem.
Have you ever walked away from one and just said, I'm here, but I ain't touching this?
We've walked away from one. It was an old Hawker that was sitting outside far too long, and we didn't even want to tear it apart. It was so bad. It was all corroded.
Right. Right.
We just told the bank, you're going to get a bill from the airport for destroying the airplane and taking it off property. So be prepared for that.
Yeah. Where is the corporate market going as far as repossessions are concerned? I mean, these are expensive toys. People sometimes buy them like they do homes. And then they realize later they bit off more than they can chew. Are you seeing more repossessions within the corporate world than you are in the airline world, or is it a mixture of both? And what's the corporate world doing as far as, like Cessna and some of the Hawker and some of the other manufacturers to make sure that the people that buy these airplanes can really hang on to them, barring some major catastrophe in their business?
I think the manufacturers don't care as long as they sell the airplane. I mean, their business is to sell the airplane.
Yeah.
What we're seeing right now is a lot of these people that smaller companies, individuals that at the outset of COVID decided to buy an airplane because prices were falling.
Yeah.
They could get in the airplane real inexpensively. Pilots were still cheap then. And then what they found out was now they're taking them in for their first big heavy maintenance visit. So an airplane they paid $1.5 million, $2 million for. This visit's going to be 800, 900,000.
Yeah.
And the sticker shock gets them, and they either struggle to pay that bill and then sell the airplane, or they just call the bank and say, we're done.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, does that prevent them, like with a mortgage for a house, ever buying an aircraft again, or nah?
Not really. Banks traditionally get in at the high end and get out at the low end.
Wow.
And because it's a lot easier to write a $5 million airplane loan than 10 $500,000 mortgages.
I know that you are semi-retired. You're the chairman of the board there, and I'm sorry we lost Petar. I really am.
Yeah, he said he's locked out for some reason.
Oh, well, I was married once. I know that feeling.
Oh, we all do.
Yeah. I'm going to call you tomorrow, and I'll call you at the house, and we'll speak. But any words of wisdom out there to any young college student that will be watching this program or about getting involved in the aviation industry?
I would encourage them to do that. The aviation industry has, when you and I grew up, the aviation industry was sexy and had a lot of appeal.
Oh, yeah.
People dressed up to get on the airplane.
Oh, yeah.
Today, it's become more of a bus service. But what people don't realize, there's so many other jobs in aviation besides pilot and flight attendant.
Yeah.
You got maintenance planning, maintenance control, you got accounting, you got marketing. And they need to look at those other positions that right now we're crying for people in the industry. We're just not bringing the people up the way we used to.
No.
And they're good paying jobs.
It's like I said earlier, the airline people that I knew that had kerosene in their blood, they're all gone.
Yeah.
I mean, the last pilot that my dad flew with passed when my dad passed away in 99. I think the last guy was 2008 or 2009, and I was living in Las Vegas, and his wife actually found me in Las Vegas. She came out to catch a show, and there I was performing, and she told me that, you know, he had just passed away. All those guys are gone. I mean, you know,
Yeah, we had a couple of Eastern pilots that lived by me out in Indiana, and they're all gone. It used to be fun to sit and have coffee with them in the morning.
oh yeah, and my dad was my dad was a practical joker. Nobody out there is going to get this but you and I. But remember the cockpit on the DC-8, there'd be that little hallway, and then you'd get to the galley, and then you'd get to first class.
Yep.
My dad would come out with a cup of coffee after they took off and they got in their cruising altitude, because there was 3 guys up front back then. He'd come out with his cup of coffee and he'd look at the people in first class. He said, you know, I'm claustrophobic. I can't stand it up there. And then after a while, they stopped pilots from being friendly. My dad would wear the Santa hat and the whole bit. I mean, it was that. By the way, at Breniff, what was your last the 747?
7-4.
Yeah, my uncle. Did you fly the Big Orange?
Yep.
Yeah, that was one heck of an airplane, man. I got to tell you, I got some model airplanes here somewhere in my boxes of some of this stuff. I don't have a lot of it anymore, but I used to have some of it. But I loved it. I grew up in it. I wanted to make my life at it, but it just didn't work out that way. And, you know, that's the way sometimes God has it planned out for all of us. But Nick Popovich, I am so pleased and honored to have you on this program. I am so pleased and honored to have met you. You are an interesting gentleman. You fly a good stick, sir.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being on.
I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I asked all the right questions. I'm in awe of your success. I wish I had met you all those years ago. Who knows? I'd be living in Gary, Indiana, where my ex-mother-in-law came from, working for you. That would have been a pleasure. But I'm going to give you a call tomorrow and give you my address and the whole bit. But
okay, we'll get you some swag.
Yeah, because I definitely, but I didn't expect that on the first name, the Sage part. That's something else. But Nick, thank you. God bless you. Your entire staff is wonderful. I hope we can do this again real soon. I really do. And tell Petar I really wish he could have joined us. Maybe we'll work it out next time that he can. But God bless you, and thank you so much, Nick Popovich, from the founder and past president, current chairman of the board of Sage Popovich. And now you're going to hop in his Bentley and he's going to take off somewhere and go have dinner somewhere in Gary, Indiana.
Actually, it's bourbon and cigar time.
What kind of bourbon?
We drink Garrison.
Really? I used to roll my cigars in that stuff. And then I quit smoking cigars because I went in one day to do a voiceover in LA and I couldn't speak. And I said, nah, I'm sorry. I love cigars, but I love my career too. So it didn't quite happen. But anyway, Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
God bless. And to all of you out there, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Main Street. We'll be back with another show real soon. Hope you enjoyed this one. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.